explanation.
Huh?
Okay, I'm going back to the name of these little Stanley figurines, and now I'm torn between Stanlerines and Figlies. What do you think, Stanley? What name better encapsulates the intrinsic sense of happiness that you get from seeing a small number in the corner of your screen go up by 1? Let me sit on it. I'm sure it will come to me.
Stanco Pop.
The elevator raced downward, plummeting towards an unknown fate. It would be all Stanley could do to keep himself together, if not for the bucket. Soothing him, comforting him, reassuring that in this darkest moment of uncertainty, he would be all right. The bucket is here for you, Stanley. Everything will be fine.
What? ¿Puedo subirte, no? Sí.
Stanley and the bucket walked straight ahead through the large door that read, Mind Control Facility.
Ay, ¿qué hacemos? ¿Seguimos con la historia o troleamos? Es que ni siquiera la historia principal, ahora ando con un balde, estamos jugando como el intento de Stanley para los dos que querían hacer.
The lights rose on an enormous room packed with television screens. What horrible secret did this place hold? Stanley and the bucket both wondered to themselves.
Y el balde, po,
The monitors jumped to life, and Stanley nearly dropped the bucket in shock. Everyone in the office was being videotaped, monitored like guinea pigs. The bucket had never seen anything like this, and it very nearly burst into tears as Stanley cradled it gently, reassuring it that everything would be fine. Was the bucket under the mind control facility's influence as well? Had the bucket been told to do things it didn't wish to do? What kinds of things does a bucket want to do or not want to do in the first place? These questions raced furiously in Stanley's feeble mind. No! He screamed into the bucket. He couldn't accept it. His own life in someone else's control, never! He squeezed the bucket tighter. His one friend in the entire world. At this point, he could trust no one except for the bucket.
Qué estupidez esta wea.
But here was the proof. The heart of the operation. Controls labeled with emotions, happy or sad or content. Walking, eating, working, all of it monitored and commanded from this very place. And as the cold reality of his past began to sink in, Stanley decided that this machinery would never again exert its terrible power over another human life. For he and the bucket would dismantle the controls for good. Two best friends, Stanley and the bucket, up against the world. They high-fived in a really cool way. The bucket made a sassy comment about taking down the system. When at last they came to the source of the room's power, Stanley and the bucket knew it was their obligation to put an end to this horrible place and to everything it stood for.
¿Y si la apretaban?
But at the last second, the bucket jumped in and pressed the button to turn on the controls. Stanley gasped in horror. Had this been the bucket's plan all along? To take over the machine and claim the power for itself? How could the bucket have betrayed him like this? Stanley was prepared to throw the bucket away in disgust when suddenly an image appeared upon the enormous screen. Birds. Silly birds. The control buttons became active again.
Oh, guacamayo.
Stanley flipped through one video of silly birds after another, and then it dawned on him. This wasn't a mind control facility at all. It was a facility for monitoring and surveilling silly birds all over the world. The mind controls were only a facade to disguise its true intentions. Had the bucket known this all along? Stanley marveled at the metal genius in his hands, the one who had pointed him towards this incredible discovery. Stanley and the bucket never found freedom because they spent the rest of their lives here in this place, flipping through live streams of the silliest birds imaginable. Of all the possible paths his life could have taken, this one was surely the best. And Stanley was happy.
Ending. 10 de 10. No podemos volver al inicio, weón. Están los globos ahí, los veo. No podemos regresar.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
What? ¿Estoy sin el balde? ¡Oh!
Stanley lifted the bucket into his arms, and a wave of comfort rushed over him. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest and entered the door on his left.
Ya, y ahora quiero cambiar acá. Tenía que abrir por la puerta derecha y había uno más seguro. Oh, por abajo ahora.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley and the bucket walked upstairs to the boss's office.
Nope.
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, admitting he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, why had he taken that risk? All because he believed everyone had vanished? His boss would think he was crazy. And then, something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. He looked down at the bucket in his arms. Am I crazy? He asked the bucket. The bucket returned his gaze, but said nothing at all. That's strange, Stanley thought. Usually the bucket is a source of guidance and wisdom for me in difficult times such as these. He held the bucket close, yet felt none of its familiar reassurance and comfort. And that's when Stanley realized, this isn't my bucket. It's just a normal, everyday bucket. Someone else's bucket, perhaps. How did I end up with someone else's bucket? This is all terribly wrong. Surely no good would come from this. Who knows what sorts of bizarre hallucinations Stanley might experience without the psychologically grounding presence of his bucket. And indeed, now he noticed that the rooms were repeating, which was, of course, very odd. And now he felt himself floating off the ground. Oh, gracious, he exclaimed. Without my bucket, I've gone truly mad. Where is it? I must find it. Far off in the distance now, he heard it, calling to him. Stanley! Stanley, it's me!
Uy, la mea volar, hermano. La mea volar.
He rushed forward from room to room, passing by one bucket after the next. None of them were his. None of them were his special bucket. Come to me, Stanley. Find me. He had to find the bucket. He had to return to his old friend. It was the only way to truly restore his sanity. And then suddenly, it froze dead in his tracks. He knew where the voice of the bucket had been coming from. The real bucket was inside of him all along. It was incredibly painful. Stanley doubled over in agony and blacked out.
No.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella. Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She arose, got dressed, picked up her bucket of comfort and security, and walked to her place of work. But on this particular day, her walk was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town, talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk. Right away, she knew what the problem was. This man had no bucket. Of course he'd gone mad, ranting and raving about a narrator describing all of his actions and how everything is predetermined and free will is an illusion and it's all just a video game. It could all have been prevented if only he'd taken his bucket with him. Perhaps he didn't even realize he'd forgotten his bucket at home in the first place. How cruel the world can be, Mariella thought, and she hugged her own bucket even tighter. But of course, she had no time for this. There were a myriad of confusing problems she would soon have to confront at work, for which her bucket would provide absolute guidance and total clarity on everything. Heck yes, she thought to herself, my life kicks ass. And she backflipped all the way to work.
Dando volteretas hacia atrás. ¡No! ¿Qué me falta? Sigo atrapado aquí, weón, en la weá del
A soft
balde,
wind
culiao.
blew outside and perhaps rain started, and if it did, it stopped shortly after. Stanley hoped that he would one day see weather.
What? What? ¿Y eso? No lo leí. No, para el computador. Ah, pero bueno, no decía nada importante por eso. ¿Por qué lo PC tan prendido ahora? No, aquí está la wea de nuevo, en lugar de culiao.
The confusion and the chaos all seemed to melt away as Stanley embraced the bucket. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
¿Una figurita?
And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Was this better than the meeting room? Yes, Stanley thought to himself. Yes, perhaps it truly was. How insightful the bucket turned out to be. No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
La vez que fui por aquí nunca seguí derecho para ver cómo llevar a la sala de reuniones ahí al fondo. Pero eso es volver a la oficina del jefe que ya pasamos y volver al subterráneo que ya pasamos. ¿Nos queda este ascensor o por acá?
No, said the bucket. Don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift.
Te cobran por usarlo mal y por tirarse $5,000. Veo un camino secreto ahí, una figurita de Stanley. Me ocurrió eso, ¿no? Eso.
You're getting close now, Stanley. You've nearly gotten all of the Figler and Marines. Very soon, you'll collect the last one. And then the first number will equal the second number, and that will be it. We'll be different people by then. Different in the sense that we used to have none of them. And now we have them all. You can't go back to when you had no Figler and Marines. None of us can.
Me quedó una... Ahora que me acordé también hay una... ¿Dónde estoy? Una cosa pendiente, al lado de una alcantarilla. Cuando me llamó había una puerta. Tampoco la vimos. La puerta de escape antes de la sala de control de mentes. Tampoco la vimos. No. ¿Sala de ediciones contrarias?
Okay, this is day number 295. Tape number... I don't even know. I've lost track. Nothing feels real anymore. The longer I study this bucket,
No.
the less sense anything makes. The sheer euphoria I feel every time I pick it up. No matter how many times I've done it, it's always the same feeling. And the emptiness in my chest when I set it down. It doesn't make sense. There's no explanation for it. I still haven't figured out why I see the world so
Se fueron la media hora con los
differently
balines.
when this bucket is in my arms. Why everything feels so... What do I do with this treasure? I can monetize it. Yes. It's unthinkable the amounts of money people will pay for even just an hour with the bucket. This is my golden ticket. But I have to be careful, because as soon as this gets out, there's going to be a target on my back. Even now, I don't know who might be trying to get... What's that? Who's there? Caporata.
What? Ta. Fuck. Oh. Ah. Está todo cambiado, weón. Nunca volveré a ser el mismo, weón. Este es el balde de mierda, déjame.
With the bucket in his arms again, Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the bucket calling to him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct? No, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meeting room.
No,
Said the bucket.
don't go to the meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Go there. Go to the cargo lift. Good,
Said the bucket.
now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why or how this bucket was speaking to him.
me
It
quiero
should
que
have
la
alarmed
pasada.
him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked.
Ah, listo. ¿Y ahora cómo voy a volver allá? No lo sabemos, pero tengo una puerta abierta por aquí. Ya no. Ah, yo estoy yendo, weón.
No, stop! Look there on the wall, you see? There's a sign right there. It says, no buckets past this point. Stanley, how could you think it was okay to bring the bucket here? Unless, what if the problem is that you actually don't know what is a bucket and what isn't a bucket? I suppose that would explain a lot about your behavior up to this point. Which, if that's true, well, my goodness, I think we have to do something about it. This misunderstanding could have dire consequences on the entire rest of the game if not addressed quickly and properly. So much of the impact of the story is dependent on your understanding of what is and isn't a bucket. Please, step in here for a moment.
¿Qué es un balde? Pero
Now
what?
then, I'm going to run you through some test scenarios, and you'll tell me whether or not the thing I'm showing you is a bucket. Simple enough, right? This should tell us everything we'll ever need to know about what is or is not a bucket. Okay, let's begin. Item 1. Is this a bucket? Incorrect. It is a hologram of a bucket, not an actual bucket.
Ah, listo.
Item 2. Is this a bucket?
Como que quiere ser millonario de baldes. No, ese no es un bucket.
Correct.
Eso.
It is a 3D printed recreation of a bucket, not an actual bucket.
De nada.
Item 3. Is this a bucket? Incorrect. This is a bucket. Item 4. Is this a bucket? Correct. This is a tractor and not a bucket. To be honest, I just sort of put this one in here as a gimme, but I was starting to get concerned that even this might be too much for you. Thank you for not making me look like an idiot. Okay, next one. Is this a bucket?
No, esta weá sí va a ser un balde, weón.
Incorrect. This is a bucket.
¿Pero qué?
Item 6. Is this a bucket?
No, weón.
Trick question. Both. Gotcha. Item... Wait, hold on. I can't find the next one. Let me see. It should be around here somewhere. Yes. Thank you. There's nothing here. Of course it isn't a bucket. We both know full well that nothing isn't a bucket. Wait, when I say nothing isn't a bucket, that makes it sound like I'm saying everything is a bucket, which of course is not true. Unless... Is that what you think? Answer me straight, Stanley. Are you trying to tell me that you believe everything is a bucket? You know what? I'm too confused to even sort it out. I've lost all sense of perspective. What is a bucket? What isn't a bucket? Mere moments ago I could answer these questions with confidence. And yet now I'm somewhat adrift. Do any of us know what a bucket is? Am I a bucket? Stanley, I can't keep doing this. I'm losing myself, and myself was all I ever had to begin with. I'm afraid the bucket is threatening to tear our relationship apart. I can't have that. I'm sorry. But I'm going to erase all buckets from the game.
Oh, gracias, weón.
Okay, here we go.
Ya. Vamos.
What happened?
Sin problemas.
Was everything gone?
No, sin
Why did
baldes.
everything disappear? Wait, was everything a bucket? Every single thing in the game was a bucket? Oh my God, I had no idea. How could... Except me. I'm not a bucket after all. And you, Stanley, you're still here. You're not a bucket either. Oh, this is wonderful news. We're not buckets. Yes, I actually feel much more at ease right now. It's delightful to get some clarity on that issue, but it doesn't change the fact that we haven't got a game. So, tell you what, I'll reset everything and we'll put back all of the buckets,
No,
okay?
por favor.
And we'll know that it's all a bucket. But if you run into anyone else, maybe don't mention that. Who knows what that information might do to a person? All right, here we go.
Ah, Por no tomar la puerta que me dijeron.
Just a step through this door, Stanley thought to himself. That's all I need. If I can make it through this door, I can make it through them all.
No quiero más balde, weón. No quiero más. Espérate, ahora me tiré por un lado.
Stanley picked up the bucket and smiled. He'd never be alone again, not truly alone.
Tenía que haber
Not
venido
with the
sin el
bucket.
balde porque hay una puerta que decía no balde, weón. Bueno, vamos a ver el otro lado entonces. Me quedan
Stanley
3
clutched the
partes,
bucket
según
tightly
lo que
to
yo
his
cuento.
chair. This was not the correct way to the meeting room, but Stanley had felt the
No lo puedo
bucket
soltar, la
calling to
wea.
him, telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be. And here it was. Had the bucket turned out to be correct?
Ya me queda
Was
cruzar
there-
todo.
Never mind.
Me queda el
The bucket
ascensor
was
de acá
wrong.
abajo y me queda la
Stanley
pasar
took the
sin el
door in his
balde y
hand
la puerta de
to
ahí.
go back to the meeting room,
No,
said the bucket.
don't
Me
go
falta
to
un
the
monito más.
meeting room. Go somewhere else. The cargo lift, yes. Good.
Said the bucket.
Now ride the lift all the way to the top. There's something up there I need you to do.
Stanley did not question why
Hay una
or
puerta
how
abierta
this
ahí abajo.
bucket was speaking to him. It should have alarmed him, of course, because buckets can't talk. But Stanley chose not to think about this obvious fact. He was firmly convinced that the bucket had spoken to him, and he unthinkingly did whatever the bucket asked.
In here.
Said the bucket.
Go into this dark room over here.
Stanley once again obeyed blindly.
Acá está el teléfono antes. A ver.
Now pick up the phone.
Said the bucket. This is the sad story of a man named Stanley and his bucket. Once upon a time, I gave Stanley a bucket because I thought he was lonely and could use a friend. And then, very distressingly, he began to believe the bucket could speak to him.
Vamos a hacer pinche balde. No, tengo cuadros de balde en mi casa, weón. The fuck? Ya la cagué. ¿Narrador? Brr.
The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket was merely meant to provide the comforting glow of companionship. It doesn't literally talk and give you orders. Whatever Stanley is hearing the bucket say to him is just in his head.
Espérate, venga de acá, po. Pucha, no puse atención a lo que me dijo el weón. Ah, no, caché que tenía que hacer. Hasta el balde aquí, po, weón.
Lately, I've been concerned about him. Wouldn't you be concerned as well? To see him delusional like this, obsessing over an inanimate metal object? I want to say something to him, but I don't know how I can convince him. I don't know if he'll listen to me.
Ya se me perdió de nuevo el balde, culiao. Y ahora sí que no está en esta habitación, pues, cuando entre la... Ahí está, pues. Pero, what?
Oh, I'll try anyway. Stanley, can you hear me? Listen to me. It's just a bucket. It can't think, it can't talk. All it will ever truly do for you is effectively transfer a liquid from one location to a different location. That's it. It doesn't do anything else. You see, he's not listening.
Ya, ahora sí que
He's
no está.
still taking orders from the bucket. You know, once upon a time it was me he took orders from. Me he trusted and listened to. Now all he cares about is his awful bucket. This stupid hunk of metal.
No, ahora sí que no está en ningún lado. ¿Le si me pongo aquí? ¿Lo ven? Ya lo vi, pues, bueno.
It's sad, but I suppose he doesn't need me anymore. From now on, he's just going to cling to this bucket, this cold, empty bucket, this sort of shiny bucket. Well, I'll give it this. The bucket does have a nice shine to it. Yes, I suppose on closer inspection that it doesn't quite look like your average hardware store bucket. It's just a little more, what am I trying to say? Sturdier, more capable of transporting liquid.
Oh, el buen rellenador,
Like it would be
hermano,
better
el
at
balde.
moving an amount of water from one room to another.
Para ir una y otra vez el mismo día conmigo.
Oh my God, what am I saying? Better at carrying water from room to room. It's a bucket. It's literally just a bucket. Why do I feel some need to point out the ways in which it's so much more than just a regular bucket? Oh no, I'm having feelings for the bucket. No. What's going on? Why do I want to be with the bucket? Hear what the bucket has to say. Do anything it asks. What's wrong with me? I don't understand. Perhaps, if I had the bucket, this would be less confusing. Yes, the bucket could tell me what to do in this
Una noche
troublesome
romántica con este
situation.
loco, weón.
Stanley, give me the bucket. Give it to me. Give me the bucket, Stanley. I need it. Give it to me now. Give it or I'll...
What? Balde sexual.
Stanley had never seen the office this brightly lit. Was it a sign of something? He hoped it was. He hoped very much that it was.
Nah, quédate ahí, balde, culiao. Voy a ir a la cuestión que decía sin baldes.
When Stanley came to a set of two open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. The lounge was grand, majestic, perhaps, but eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
Le falta una figurita también.
Look, Stanley, I think
me llama
perhaps
la
we've
atención la
gotten
puerta
off on
está ahí
the
abajo.
wrong foot here. I'm not your enemy, really.
Mira, me puedo tirar y caer encima
I
de ese camino y
realize
caer vivo.
investing your trust in someone else can be difficult, but the fact is that the story has been about nothing but you all this time. There's someone you've been neglecting, Stanley. Someone you've forgotten about. What? Really? I was in the middle of something. Do you have zero consideration for others? Are you that convinced that I want something bad to happen to you? Why, I don't know how to convince you of this, but I really do want to help you, to show you something beautiful. Look, let me prove it. Let me prove that I'm on your side. Give me a chance. Now listen carefully, this is important. Stanley walked through the red door.
¡Oh!
And there it is, the last Stiggly Wiggly. Savor this moment, Stanley. This is a real accomplishment. This is doing something just for the sake of doing it. Where so many people expect to be rewarded for the most trivial achievements, you've insisted that a job well done is its own reward. I would tell you that I'm proud of you for collecting them all, but that would be like a reward, and we can't have that. So, instead I'll just say, it's done. We're all done here. And now we can go to whatever the hell you were doing before you hunted for figurines. Oh, thank God you are willing to listen to me. Do you see that I really have wanted you to be happy all this time? The problem is all these choices. The two of us always trying to get somewhere that isn't here. Running and running and running, just the way you're doing right now. Don't you see that it's killing us, Stanley? I wanted to stop. We would both be so much happier if we just stopped. And I think I have a solution. Here, let me show you.
A ver.
What do we want? What are we looking for?
Esto lo vi antes. En una puertecita que se acuerdan que miraba así como de lado y esto mismo.
Here. Yes. Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it? If we just stay right here, right in this moment with this place, Stanley, I think I feel happy. I actually feel happy. No, wait. Where are you going?
A ver si me devuelvo.
Right. Where were we?
Adiós.
Oh no! Stay away from those stairs. If you hurt yourself, if you die, the game will reset. We'll lose all of this.
¿Cómo voy a morir en la escalera, weón? Vamos a tirar algo de arriba.
Please, no, Stanley, let me stay here. Don't take this from me.
¿Qué pasa?
Please, Stanley, think about what you're doing.
No tengo otra salida. ¿O sí? Déjà vu. ¿Tengo otra salida, no? Adiós.
No!
Estoy bien.
Oh, thank God you lived. No. No, what are you doing, Stanley? Please, I'm asking you not to take this away from me. I can't go back to what I was before. If you die, we'll both go back. Why are you doing this? Stanley, let's go back to the other room. Can you do that for me?
Estoy todo cojo ahora encima, no puedo ni correr. ¿Acuerdas la cara de las luces?
Perhaps you can. Perhaps you finally see what I'm talking about. I know you'll see that we can't be happy if we leave this place. You can see that, can't you?
No hay nada que hacer aquí, pues, amigo. Adiós.
No, perhaps not.
Perhaps. Me decía, voy cojo y estoy camino súper lento.
My God, is this really how much you dislike my game? That you'll throw yourself from this platform over and over to be rid of it? You are literally willing to kill yourself to keep me from being happy. Am I reading the situation correctly? Or maybe you're just getting a kick out of it. I don't know anymore. I just wanted us to get along. But I guess that was too much to ask. It looks like you wanted to make a choice after all. Well, this one is yours.
Tengo mis figuritas, con eso me conformo. Ahora no sé por dónde ir. Me quedan dos caminos. Un camino.
Is it over?
Gracias, weón.
It's going to restart, isn't it? I'm going back.
Oh, weón. La oportunidad de hacerlo bien ha vuelto, muchachos. Finalmente. No hay globos, ni baldes, ni una oficina bugueada con una foto de lo que era la oficina bien hecha. Mira lo que me hacen, mira. Desde aquí se ve perfecto. Entra aquí hay una foto con...
Stanley, I'm sorry, but I have to put a pause on things. It's those figurines. Those figglers. I haven't stopped thinking about them since you nabbed every last one. Wasn't it just the most intrinsically fulfilling moment of your entire life? Didn't it fill you to the brim with inner richness? Yes, I know we're supposed to be telling a story, but won't you please indulge me with one more trip back to the memory zone? I would love nothing more than to revisit the figurines. Just one more time.
Ahora recordando cuando Stanley encontró las figuritas.
Here's where it all began. The first collectible. Back then, we had no idea of how many of them we'd find. Sure, it said 6 right there on the screen, but how could we know for certain? We were so innocent. We'll never be like that again, Stanley.
Dice colector 7. Esto, tengo 7, easy.
And here was a second Stanlerine. I'll be honest, back then I had no faith in you to find any of them, let alone 6. But you continue to surprise me in all sorts of mundane, unremarkable ways. Okay, let's do a little quiz. Which of these rooms was the room you found your third mini Stan? Can you remember?
Claro que sí, muchacho, por acá en el baño del jefe. Lo recuerdo como si fuera hoy.
Hey, that's exactly right. It was here in the boss's bathroom. It was the third one. You picked it up, and then after that, you had 3 of them. I'm glad these moments are so crystal clear in your memory, but I shouldn't be surprised. After all, science tells us that it's impossible to forget your third time doing anything. Let's see, what came next? Oh yes, we found a Figley in this pink room.
No.
Oh, well, I can't actually say I remember being in this room, but it's here in the memory zone, so it must have happened.
No, aquí sí. Ahí está.
This was the 5th mini Stan, and this one was really something special. It was in the warehouse. I remember it so clearly.
Te voy a tener que tomar el
In
otro.
fact, because this one is particularly special to me, I made a little video to commemorate the occasion. Enjoy.
La de ahora, amor. What? Secreto.
Takes you back, doesn't it? I spent a lot of time making that video, but it was 8 minutes I wouldn't have spent on anything else.
No tomé el de atrás y me cerraron. No tomé el de la habitación rosa porque no... Nunca pasé por ahí, po. Esto ya la realidad.
And then, Stanley, then we came to the last collectible, the final figurine, right here by the red and blue doors. This memory is the most distinct and clear in my mind, perhaps because it was the one that happened more recently than all the others. Who can truly say how the mind works? All I know is that this is the moment where you picked up a fig and I thought to myself, yes, that's all of them. They're all collected. It was a moment unlike any other, except for the other moments picking up figurines, which it was exactly like.
Falta una hora, weón.
And then there was no more, because we've caught up to the present moment. Nothing left to do but move onward into the future. Goodbye, memory zone.
Y no tomé uno, weón.
No, I'm not done. I'm not ready to move on. Stop the loading screen. Isn't there some way we can stay here, keep enjoying these figurines? Let's just go backwards. We'll do the memory zone again from the opposite direction. See how that feels. Okay, yes, the room with the red and blue doors. I remember this. I must say, of all the figurines we looked at in our initial tour of the memory zone, this one is the most distinct and clear in my mind. Let's keep going, I want more.
What?
And here's where I made that video. Don't you remember the video we watched? Yes, I love that video.
Este no lo tomé, era ante otro lío.
Still don't remember the pink room, Stanley. Still no memory of this one. Good room, though. A solid room.
¿Y el que me falta cuál es en realidad? El baño del jefe aquí. El robo.
These really were a treat to hunt down. You know, if there had been any kind of reward for finding all of these, it really would have neutered the intrinsic joy of collecting them. I'm very glad we resisted the temptation. Next one.
La oficina del jefe, ¿no? ¿Y si aquí paso por la oficina del jefe? ¿Qué pasa realmente? Nah, no me deja porque era de ida solamente.
This was our second Figley. Don't you remember? Yes, I remember it too. The past is truly a wonderful thing. Why does anyone ever choose to leave it? Keep going. This is it, the very first one we found in the exhibit where I introduced you to the figurines. Oh, I want more memories, Stanley. I want to keep going. What else is there? What came before this?
De los saltos.
Look, it's the terrible new content that we were originally sold on. I remember hating it back then, but time does put a rosy filter on everything. In fact, I dare say I'm actually quite fond of it now. Look how much fun the past is. I want more. More memories.
Ese de allá por los 10 mesacos.
Oh, yes, the two doors. Who could have forgotten that? A classic memory, this one. And before everything else, there was your office. Yeah. Is there anything else? Was there something that came before your office? There's something I feel I can remember. I can remember. Yes, I'm remembering something now. I remember before this whole story got started. Back then I was different. I used to make big decisions. I was passionate. I was skeptical. I weighed each decision with profound thoughtfulness. And then somewhere along the way, I stopped making decisions. I became lazy. And I came up with a character named Stanley to do my thinking for me. He would make the decisions. He would decide which way to go. I would cheer him on as he collected figurines for no reason. Why did I invent Stanley? Was I lonely? Yes, perhaps that's it. Perhaps I needed to imagine I had companionship. And Stanley really did make for a wonderful companion, even if he was a fiction. But I suppose it's grown old. I want to think for myself again. I want to go back to how it used to be. Yes, I can be on my own again. I can do it. I'll be stronger this time. I'll take care of myself. I don't need Stanley anymore. Oh, but he truly was so much fun to play with. You know what? Since we're in the memory zone, how about one more good memory?
Cuando
Let's
no
go
había
back
balde, weón,
just
por favor.
once and give Stanley one more run of the office, and
Cuando
then
tenía la oportunidad de
I'll
hacer las cosas
retire
bien.
him for good. I did enjoy telling his story so very much. Okay, here we go. This is the story of a man named Stanley.
No, hay globos, weón.
All of his co-workers were gone. What could it mean? Stanley decided to go to the meeting room. Perhaps he had simply missed a memo.
¿Dónde fui ahora? ¿Qué me faltaba hacer? ¿Ya fui a la sin balde? Oh,
The good old bucket. Just Stanley and the bucket. Off on another thrilling adventure together. Stanley clutched the bucket tightly to his chest. This was not the correct way to the meeting room. But Stanley had
Faltaba bajar el
felt the
ascensor
bucket calling
con el
to him,
balde.
telling him that the employee lounge was simply the place to be.
Y elegir
And
puerta
here it
azul puede
was.
ser.
Had the bucket turned out to be correct? Well, no, never mind. The bucket was wrong. Stanley took the door on his left to go back to the meet, and so the two of them detoured through the maintenance section and walked straight ahead to the opposite door.
Ah, claro, se abre la puerta del pasillo, pero ahí está la sala de reuniones. No es un gran cambio.
Oh, good Stanley, I'm glad you found your way here. I knew you'd find this place
What?
eventually.
Sabía que en algún momento
You
vendría
see,
ese-
your friends and I are concerned for you, Stanley. We've come together here because we care about you very much. It's this bucket you're carrying around everywhere. The bucket isn't even from the original Stanley Parable. It's just sequel content. We're the ones that matter, Stanley. Classic characters from the first game, like the Adventure Line and the Broom Closet. Because that's what fans want from a sequel. They want more of their favorite jokes, not this bucket that they've never seen before. Yes, I know I'm the one who gave you the bucket, but you're spending too much time with it. Don't you want another story involving the Adventure Line? We could make the Adventure Line go somewhere new. Yes, yes, that's what the fans want. Let's do it.
Pero esto es de esto, po. Si es con, tiene relación con el balde esa habitación. ¿Yo le he hecho alguna vez una intervención, muchachos? Esto es como una intervención. Cuando llegas a tu casa y te ponen un cartelito así colgado, como para decirte que estás haciendo las cosas mal en tu vida. La planta está sentada en un sofá, ¿verdad? Son como todos los clásicos.
Whee! Look at that wacky line. Who knows where it'll go off to next? Oh, and it played some silly music as well.
No, por favor.
Now this is what the Stanley Parable is all about. Don't you remember all those great jokes from the original dialogue? Also, Stanley is addicted to drugs and hookers. Yes, it's as classic now as it was back then. Let's do it for the fans, Stanley. Let's give them more content exactly like this. But if we want to do that, you're going to have to give something up.
Al balde, por favor, lo quiero botar.
Don't you get it, Stanley? We need to get rid of the bucket. That's why I'm very proud to introduce a brand new character. This is the Bucket Destroyer.
Me gusta.
I think it'll make a wonderful new addition to the rich lore of the Stanley Parable. True, it also was not in the original game, but it's such a well-fleshed-out character with so much personality that to me it already feels as though it's been part of the cast all along. Don't you agree? Can you guess what the Bucket Destroyer does? Surely you don't need me to spell it out for you.
Feliz lo destruyo.
Go ahead
Nunca
now,
haría esta
Stanley.
wea.
Say goodbye to the bucket, and then pop it into the machine when you're ready.
¿Por qué el se pone tímido cuando lo quiero poner ahí?
Now listen to me. It's crucial that you give it the bucket. I don't know what the bucket destroyer will do if it can't destroy your bucket. Destroying buckets is all it knows. That is its singular personality trait. Sure, I can hear you saying, how does a character with only one personality trait deserve to join the pantheon of beloved Stanley Parable characters? Well, you see, if you were to really explore the bucket destroyer, you would see that its desire to crush buckets is so densely loaded with complexity and nuance that it's really like 10 personality traits. What other object in this game can you even say that about? The broom closet? Certainly not. I wonder what sort of bucket destroyer merchandise the fans will be clamoring for after this. Okay, the bucket destroyer is getting very upset now. You'll have to hurry and see it. We can't get back to the classic Stanley Parable characters like the Adventure Line or the bucket destroyer until you crush that damn bucket. Quickly now, the fans are waiting. Do it, the fans, Stanley. Give the fans what they want. Hurry and...
Justo apreté espacio, no sé si lo tiré. No, explotamos.
The bucket destroyer. My prized creation. You had so much potential. We were going to do such marvelous things with you, tell such spellbinding stories about you. All of it squandered now. Goodbye, new friend. For the moment in time that you were here, you were magnificent.
El balde no quería morir, bueno. Estaba a mí. Ya, ¿qué nos queda? Puerta azul. Sin balde.
The meeting room. Yes, that's where everyone would be. Stanley just needed to get to the meeting room, and from then on, he would never be alone ever again. When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it. It was okay.
Espérate. El
But
camión.
eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left.
¿Y la puerta azul está pasando esta grúa completamente o tengo que bajarme a la mitad? No me acuerdo.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.
¿Podría bajar por acá mejor? Más fácil. Porque por la grúa tiene pinta de que me muero, ¿no? Ni que por acá se puede bajar. Mira, de aquí directo a esa caja. Easy jump. Easy jump. Suave jump. Me tiré 3 veces de una escalera mucho más alta. Oh. Vamos más suave todavía. ¡Ojo! Bajando por aquí. Suavito.
In his eagerness to prove that he is in control of the story and no one gets to tell him what to do, Stanley leapt from the platform and plunged to his death. Good job, Stanley. Everyone thinks you are very powerful.
No me deja bajar, weón. Iba bajando suavecito, weón.
How wonderful. Stanley was alone. Finally. This is great, he thought to himself. This is what I've wanted all along. I got what I wanted. No matter how hard Stanley looked, he couldn't find a trace of his co-workers.
Ah, olvídalo, horrible. O sea, Valde. Ya le di una oportunidad para destruirlo, pero no supe cómo tirarlo porque el loco me abrazaba y me decía
When Stanley came to a set of 2 open doors, this was not the correct way to the meeting room, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. Perhaps he wanted to stop by the employee lounge first, just to admire it.
Y de espalda. Para el estilo.
It was okay.
What?
But eager to get back to business, Stanley took the first open door on his left. Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago.